Hi everyone, welcome back to tTt. I am your host, Tianyi Wang. Today, we are so honored to sit down and have the conversation with internationally acclaimed keyboardist, pianist, producer, and piano faculty at Berklee College of Music. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk firstly with your tour with Allan Holdsworth in 1987 to 2003.
Yeah.
This is such a legendary partnership. What are some of the lessons probably you gained from this touring experiences?
So, I stayed with him for about a decade, really, and then we did other work with the recording after that. Before I met Allan, I was actually just a fan, and I loved his music. I was just excited to go hear him play when he came to Boston, and then when I got to meet him, and then he asked me to be in his band. That's when the collaboration started, like in 1987. I was on tour with bassist Stanley Clarke, and Allan was on tour with us. Kind of funny because he wanted to use me, not because of the way I played, but he heard a song that I wrote that we wound up recording together. And so during sound check, I would play one of my compositions just for the sound check. He came up to me, he said, "What song is that you're playing?" I'm like, "Oh, that's the song I wrote." And he just said, "Would you mind recording that on my next record?" And that's how we kind of got started. It kind of taught me a lot about how we worked together, because he was more interested in my compositional style.
So I know that you had a father who plays bebop saxophone,
Yeah.
but you certainly did not start with standards. I know you're not a standard big fan of it.
Yeah, my dad tried to get me to learn the standards, the jazz songs that he, and I wasn't really interested because I grew up in the 70s. So I was listening to people like Allan Holdsworth and Chick Corea and McCoy Tyner, and they were playing all original music. So that's what I love to do. When I hooked up with Allan and I played his music, I felt much more comfortable playing through his compositions than I did playing, like, say, All the Things You Are, or Stella by Starlight, or Standard, because I related more to his harmonic movement and the way he approached music. And so it was much more easy to get into that style for me than to, say, join like a jazz group playing standards at that time.
Yeah. You toured with Allan at the age of like 30.
Yeah, I was just under 30. I was like 27, 28 when I met him. That's kind of how it started. It was very organic. It wasn't like there was a big audition and I went down to audition. It was just, we became friends, and he liked my style, and he thought it fit with his style. And then he asked me to go on tour, and that was it.
Yeah,
and then we started recording, and he recorded 2 or 3 of my compositions.
Yeah, because I think it's important to take energy and commitments into developing your own style instead of just like mimicking. Of course, we need to start with mimicking other styles, and then you start to resonate with other musicians and artists. So because the age 27, it's a mature age as a musician that you develop your own music. So as someone who plays with others, you have to let go of some of the things so then you can adapt into a new comfort zone. What are some of the challenges you have probably?
The challenge for that particular music with Allan was that there was no charts written, and there was, and we didn't ever do rehearsals. There was no rehearsals. We just started playing, and if he had a new song, he would show us how the song was written, and this is it, and then he would leave it, and we would just play. So that part of it was a challenge at first, but then I really got used to it. I learned a lot from that because of the way he ran his band and his music, that he really left it to the musicians to create their own desire, their own musical taste into his music. He never told us, don't do that or don't do this. He said, here's the song, do what you feel for the song.
Oh, wow.
And his theory was that each musician is very special, and they have their own take on the music, and they would just, he would let them develop it. And his theory was like, if he started telling musicians more and more what he wanted, the music would get worse and worse. So his thing was, he just let it be, and if it works for the music, then he would keep it. If it didn't work for the music, then he would just move on. He wouldn't tell somebody to change the way they play. It was a very special thing, and I can say I hadn't worked with too many musicians like that. Most musicians, including myself, were a little hands-on about what we want, especially as a producer, because I'm also a producer. But this kind of collaboration was really special with Allan.
Oh, wow. I think he really trusts his bandmates.
He did, and during the time I played with him, basically a decade from '87 to '97, during the touring time, he, like I said, there's no discussion about anything music really.
He's in another headspace.
Yeah, it was just a whole different thing, and so I didn't know like theory-wise how he thought or whatever. I just knew. Whatever he played and whatever he did, I just reimagine it, how I could explain it to myself. And then if I wanted to incorporate that into my own music, it was just the way I thought about the music. Yeah. And so I think my music, even though it's a lot like in the style of Allan, it's got a whole different direction, sort of an influence, maybe like Brahms is to Beethoven or something. Brahms is very influenced by Beethoven, but it's got a different path, So.
I know there are like tons of videos online that demystifying his playing, like Slonitsky treasure scales and Lydian modes, double harmonic major, all those crazy scales and patterns. How does theory translate into your own works and artist expressions?
With Allan's music and my music as well, there's the theory and the way we improv over it is completely different than tonal music. So there's no key center. So the music I write as well, if you listen to my records, nothing's really in a set key. And that's the way Allan would write up as well. It's just, the music is based on harmonic motion. This is one thing I learned from him too, so if you just play a harmonic structure, whatever, and then you let your emotions take you to the next harmonic structure, as opposed to the theory. So if I'm playing, say, like a F major Lydian chord, I can go wherever my emotions want to take me. I could stay diatonic, or I can go outside the key. I can go a completely different area, And then once that harmonic motion happens, then this affects the way you improvise over it. And that becomes the new theory, as opposed to like the basic theory we both learned in school about like how harmony works and how key centers work. So it can be very difficult to some people that are only based in tonality music. Say I'm in the key of B flat or the E flat, but this is nothing like that at all. It's more about harmonic motion and expression of that harmonic motion.
I think that's where the magic pieces come.
It is, because I actually studied his music more after I left his band than I did when I was in his band. And I did a couple of videos of his compositions, but on solo piano. And so I had to really study it more, and I realized that every time, like, when he moves a harmonic motion, it's never by chance. It's never a mistake or just haphazard. When he's on one harmonic structure and he moves to another one, there's a meaning behind it, a real meaning. Like, I'll give you an example. So one time he was writing a song and we recorded it on one of his records, and the improvisation section was like very, very long, and it was extremely difficult. And I worked on it just to get it so it could be released on the record. And so the harmonic structure was so complex and went to so many different things and changes. And then he told me that when he was writing that song, his initial concept for that song was just supposed to be maybe 4 or 5 chords of harmony changes. But in the end, it wound up being a really long, complicated type thing. So that happened to be a lesson for me. Like, he would move to the harmony the way he felt, and it would just keep going until he was satisfied emotionally. So
that's beautiful, because I noticed he used a lot of simple melodic driven chords instead of as a sequence, and then modulates a little bit, and then just take off from there. Yeah.
So I learned a lot from Allan from this kind of thing, and it just definitely shows up in my own music, of course, right? Because I was part of that. So
you also mentioned Stanley Clarke. Yeah. Wow. How was the experience?
Oh, that was amazing. Like, when I was a kid in the '70s, I listened to him all the time with Chick Corea.
Yeah.
And Light as a Feather and Return to Forever and School Days record, and I was a huge fan. And when I was about 24, 25, I got to meet him with this tour I was the musical director for, and he was on the tour. And it was just pure luck. He didn't have a band, and he wanted to go out and do some gigs, so he just asked me to be in his band. Again, there was no audition, or I didn't seek it out. It's just I happened to be in the right place, and that was so fantastic, because he's another guy that just it's really all about improvisation and about emotion, and we would just basically our set would just be a big 2-hour jam.
I know you have the habits of just improv on the piano.
Yeah.
And one of your songs, Impromptu, that just happened to record it, and I understand it's happening very rare at your circumstances. So can you speak to that moment of mindset? What was the philosophy of improvisation to you?
When I said in the bylines that it was very rare, I do that kind of thing a lot on my own, just by myself. It's very rare that I record it. So on my own, I do this all the time. I'll just sit at the piano and I'm a blank slate, just open. And I'll just start playing whatever. And then I let it lead me to wherever I want to go. And then things change like that. So that's kind of what that whole recording was. I just put up the mics, I pushed record, and then I just started playing. And so and I encourage my students to do this kind of thing too, because when you're playing free like this, there's no wrong or right. There's no wrong note. There's no wrong chord. There's no wrong rhythm. There's no wrong expression. You just very free to do whatever you want to do to express your emotions and your feelings at that moment. So it teaches you like how to move through harmony or sounds or clusters or openness or creativity that, say, practicing a set standard with a set form and set rhythm and a set key doesn't really teach you. So I always encourage my students to do this kind of thing where they just sit at the piano, they just hit a note or a chord, and then they take it from there. And it's just scary for a lot of people because they're like, well, what do I do next? I'm like, you do whatever you feel. And that's what that impromptu was sort of about. I actually released a record recently called Excursions. It's the same thing, and there was like 5 songs that I just put up the mics and I recorded and played. And one song was like 23 minutes or something.
When you listen back to those songs that you wrote or improved, because they're so free with structure and everything, did it help you to re-percept the timing probably?
It is weird to go back and listen because it's music that was created at that moment. And so I'd have to go back and listen as a listener. There's no structure, there's no timing thing, and it just my heart motions just move wherever I felt at that moment, you know. Sometimes I actually find songs that I can create from these improvisations. So there may be something that I do that I'm like, oh, I like that little bit. And then I take it and I'm like, okay, I can develop actually a structured song out of that idea. Yeah. So I've done a few things like that.
The impromptu actually remind me of another song you played, Mendelssohn Etude in F major.
Yeah.
The language is a little similar.
I think around that same time I did that, I was playing some Prokofiev, like one of his sonatas, and then working on a Bartok sonata as well. And so a lot of those sounds and those ideas creep into my improvisations, you know. And then the more tonal stuff, yeah, I mean, the stuff that Mendelssohn, like the Etude and the other things I recorded, and Bach. And now I'm trying to go back and work on some Bach, which is, I don't like, but I know I need to. It's very important. You always wind up back at Bach, you know.
Yeah.
And every time I play one of these composers, especially Chopin, I go into it thinking like, how are they thinking about the music? Because they're creating music at the time, just like I'm doing right now. And how do they create their harmonies? Why did Chopin go to that particular harmony? Or why does his melody have this shape and contour to it, you know? And then it can influence me when I actually compose and play my own music.
I think
if that makes sense,
yeah,
I don't know.
Totally. I think you mentioned about taking some pieces from the classical pieces or the pieces you played before and taking to improv. It's a very good way of practicing improvisation.
I definitely steal a lot from all those people, you know.
Yeah.
There was, in the Bartok sonata, there's one part where his left-hand part is in like a D dominant sound, right? Like D7. But the right-hand melody is in G melodic minor. Like completely, there's maybe one right note that belongs to D7. Everything else is wrong. And so at first it's a little jarring. I'm like, this doesn't fit. But after a while, your ear goes, it's actually a beautiful sound. And then after a while, it says, I think G sharp melodic minor sounds better over D7 than a D7 scale. And so after that, when I'm on a job or a gig and I see a D7 chord, I start going G sharp melodic minor, completely wrong.
Yeah.
But I love that combination. So I took that right from Bartok, you know. And I know Chick Corea loved Bartok and Stravinsky. And I can see a lot of that stuff in his writing and his improvisation. So, yeah, I think all this music is big influences on me. You know.
Yeah, Bartok wrote a lot of dance music, dance suites.
Yeah, and yeah, right. And it's very like dance, and
I think he's like the folk musician, like the fusion musician back then.
Yeah, he just and probably people didn't understand the music back then when he wrote it, and I think people like Allan had the same problem. Like when Allan was doing his thing, he was a little ahead of his time, and people didn't understand, and they would listen to it and like, what is this? There's no key center. I can't hear the proper form. You know, even though there was a form, it loses a lot of people. So
yeah, he is definitely venturesome. But I'm just wondering, what do you think like the motivation behind for those musicians to push it going forward, something ahead of the modern nowadays?
Well, I think for some musicians, and me included, I think the idea of moving past the time that you're at the moment, you know. So, for example, like I was saying, my dad wanted me to get into his music. I wasn't interested. I'm like, that's your old music. I wanted to do what I was hearing at the moment, you know, the music at the time. And I thought about this later, and I think all the great composers, they were exactly like that. Like Mozart didn't write like Bach, and Beethoven wrote different than Mozart, and Chopin wrote different than Beethoven, and you know, especially in your youth, you want to do something different. So, and it's not for everybody. Some people want to just kind of stay comfortable in something that already exists. But I think artists like that I grew up with, like Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, and then Allan, you could see that they wanted to move forward to something different. So you just have to like be adventurous. You have to try something new. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you may stumble upon something that really works, and then it becomes sort of the new thing, so to speak.
Let's go back to your classical works. So you record Mendelssohn Fugue in E minor. Wow, it just blows my mind with how rich the harmony you bring out, the cadences, the voices, the bass.
Yeah.
It sounds like you are a classical musician, so-called. But I guess the first intuition I was thinking, oh, maybe the improvisational mindset help you to interpret the classical music a lot.
When I play a classical piece, this is where my mind goes. It goes like with any of those composers, it's like, what are they thinking when they're composing this stuff? Like, what is their, it's not just theory, and it's not, there's something larger than just putting notes on the page and making it start and finish. It's like there's something that's going on in their mind. So when Mendelssohn writes these fugues, you know, of course he's trying to copy Bach, you know, like a fugue, but he moves on to his new style or whatever. So it's not exactly like Bach, but the concept is like that. And you can see the way he develops this one little melody. And this is really like a jazz musician. So say if we play Autumn Leaves with that one little melody, right? Every time I play it, I think of a different way to play that little theme. Do-da-do-da. That's the theme through the whole song, basically. I'll go back to the way Chopin does his themes, and he comes back to there's something slightly different to it. And this is exactly the way we think in jazz. When I play the songs, it's not completely different than what I play, but it's not the same. The rhythm changes, maybe the contour of the melody changes. I'll add notes or take notes away, start the melody in a different place, all these kind of things. So that's kind of when I play these classical pieces, I come to the mindset of them doing improvisation, because I think that's how those composers thought when they wrote music. They didn't have recordings and videos they only had to put it on paper. But I think the mindset was the same. Like, oh, I have this theme, that beautiful theme in the E minor fugue. Okay, here's the theme. Now what can I do? And then they just start developing, and it builds and builds. And that one's so cool because at the very end it has that big chorale. I don't know why he stuck that in there, but it's beautiful, and it makes perfect sense, you know. So when I do my own music, I think I do the same thing. Like, I'll start with a melody, and then I'm like, okay, where do I want to take this? Where do I feel it needs to go? And then how do I develop it? And then I got to have a conclusion to it. How do I get to the end of it? And then I'll finish it off, you know. So it's like a journey, like a musical journey, and you have to start, You have to take your journey, and then you have to finish it. And hopefully people can relate to it. And when people listen to it, they will have their own story, their own journey that they take through it. That may not be what mine originally was, but they can create their own journey to get to the end. And
that's beautiful. I think it's important to find your own feelings and then be able to have the theory, the notes, the technique, and emotions, ideas, concepts all at once when you reach to that piano. And then you reach to that all dimensions all at once. That's the greatest feelings.
I mean, when you see me play or you see my videos, I look very free and I'm doing, but you still have to go do the hard work, right? So I still have to know what the scales are.
Yes.
So it's still a lot of like just nuts and bolts of work and work and work. Mm-hmm. That hopefully when I go play or I create, I can just be free and do the best I can with the facility I have. But yeah, you still have to study theory. You still have to study